I am very excited to be here. It's funny to talk to a screen, so hopefully you guys can see me. I am here in Hong Kong. It's getting sunny outside for me, and this is my morning. And starting morning with some dumplings and cognac is the best thing I can imagine. I've been working for Cognac for quite a while. We'll get into that also in a second. But yeah, this is February 1st is officially the year of the tiger. It's the water tiger. Um, every zodiac in the Chinese zodiac has also a element sign, and we're in the water time period now. So we were just in the middle, and now we're in the water. Little nerdy stuff. We'll start the presentation a little bit and figure out how to do it. Here we go. So here's some things to tag at Cognac USA, hashtag Cognac USA, also the hashtag LNY with Cognac. Um, Perfect. And if you find that you do not get all of your questions answered today, you can also go to the cognac.fr/en, or if you speak French, ignore the en at the end. Um, so here's a little snippet about who I am. I am a bartender, entrepreneur, ran bars in the US for a long time, consulted on bars all over the world, um, recently moved to Hong Kong, got married during COVID, and decided that this is where I wanted to be. And I'm actually coming to you from my newest bar, which is opening in about 24 hours for me. So on Friday. And yeah, super excited. Thanks. Yeah, so we own 50 best bars, stuff like that. And my wife and I both own bars, and we currently have four. We're about to have four in Hong Kong. Um, and my specialty is French spirits, especially cognac. Um, yeah, so I get to sit at this lovely bar and talk to you about something I love more than anything. So I first started going to cognac. I don't even know how long ago it was. About many years ago, maybe 8 or 9. um, Became obsessed with it just as a bartender, and then started to get to know the area and the people. And so this is kind of we're gonna go. I'm gonna take you on a little trip right now. So on the screen, we've got a little video to play. It's got a little bit of a delay, but it'll give you a good sense of what the place is. Because when we talk about cognac, what we're talking about first and foremost is a taste of a place, and it's a taste of farmers, the taste of vines. And so here's a little video. Figure out how to play. So that's just a way to show you how much of an agricultural product this is. What we're talking about is a very beautiful part of France, um, rich history. So let's dive in a little bit. There's a bunch of nerdy things on this. You don't have to worry about the facts and figures, but if you look at the map on the left there, as it zooms in, so that's France, Spain below it. Just where you see that marker that says Cognac, if you go a little bit lower than that, that's Bordeaux. So you've got a lot of wine regions, but this is one of the most important ones because it is the second largest wine producer in all of France. It 10% of the vineyards are used for wine production. So when you visit, when you see it, you just see row after row after row of beautiful grapes growing everywhere. And I was first time I saw it, I was completely taken aback. Well, not just the first time. Every time I see it, I'm completely taken aback by just how incredibly manicured and organized and uh, intentionally grown everything is for one exact purpose, which is to produce this incredible spirit. Um, why it's second largest producer of wine in France is because it takes a lot of wine to make a single bottle of cognac. We'll go into that. Here's just an outline of what the crus are. Um, it's an interesting history on this. If you see this map, there's a little river that runs through. It's kind of hard to see, but it snakes kind of through the center of all this bullseye, right? If you see the bullseye, there's the main the darkest region in there is where the town of Cognac is, and then it kind of goes out from there. And each area has different kinds of soil. And if you speak to people in Cognac, they start to refer to it in two different ways as well. They talk about the Charente de Mer and Charente de Terre. So there's the ocean influence. So everything that's along the Atlantic there gets a ton of ocean air, salt, lots of salt. So when you have cellars, there's actually salt that crosses up. And then as you go more inland, you get much more of the influence of different kinds of soils versus sandy soils you might think of on a beach. This might also be a really good time for you guys to start your steam baskets, because we are going to show you a little bit about not only just have a good time because it is Chinese. I keep saying Chinese New Year's because that's what we say here in Hong Kong, but it's actually Lunar New Year. So it might be a good time to start your steam baskets and get your dumplings ready. I woke up pretty early and went hunting around the city, at least on my 6-block walk to work, to find an open place that makes dumplings, and was actually able to find one. So I will be enjoying them alongside you. And we will do the tasting kind of as we go as well. So what's important to see on here, on this list, on this photo, is just kind of an outline of the Atlantic Ocean. There are some regions, some by the water, some not. It's a very protected area. It has its own denomination. There's a couple of spirit areas in France where you can only grow those spirits. Cognac is one of them. It's, I think, the most famous, and for a very good reason. It is very well controlled. It has its standards very established. Keep going. But it wasn't always, standards weren't always like that. Cognac has a very interesting and rich history. The Romans were there planting grapes from a very long time back, about the 1st century. And it wasn't cognac the way we know it now. It was definitely wine production more than anything. Salt was its largest export at the time. The inland, as the ocean would come in, they would actually pull the water and they would create salt. And that was what was used often as currency. And it was, in the Roman period, one of the most important things to have. In fact, it was used quite often as currency. So you would get paid worth your weight in salt. That expression, it comes from salt being a key piece of finance. So anyway, a little further on, double distillation and Dutch distillation of wine begins in the 16th century, double distillation in 17th. And before that, this region was more known for sweet wines than anything. It's got rolling hills, these beautiful rolling hills. Pardon me. And so that makes it really easy to grow grapes because you get a lot of sun, and it's also slightly protected from the hills. But it also does have a tendency to get some fog, and that can lead to making it easier to grow some sweet wines. But that transition happened at a certain point because of the frost that would happen, and it became a little easier to grow some delicious grapes that could be used for, a little more acidic grapes that could be used for distillation, which is what the Dutch were going for. So the Dutch bring in the stills, they start double distillation. It becomes a pretty well distributed product, mostly in barrel, pretty much entirely in barrel. It is also one of the first places to start bottling. So bottle production, label production things like that became really important and helped create this city that's geared entirely towards this one beautiful product. In the 19th century, you have phylloxera epidemic. So before about 1875 or so, you have cognac all over the world. It is the number one, pretty much one of the number one things used for cocktails. Gin and cognac were the main things being used at the time. But with phylloxera, this little louse that eats at the roots and kills off the plants, everything changed. The wines were no longer able to grow, plants were dying off, and so other things became more popular in the world because you couldn't access wine. And cognac worked a lot with other agricultural people in the region and found ways of dealing with it, and eventually a way of kind of working around phylloxera was established. But it had a huge impact. Before phylloxera, there were 282,000 hectares of land being used for cognac, and after, it's about 40,000, about 20 years later. Now it's around the same amount, 40,000 or so. I don't remember the exact number, to be honest. But because of modern wine production techniques, you actually are there. The quantity being produced is pretty substantial. A little more 20th century because of the world wars. You have the first you have a delimitation of the region, and then rules for the AOC protecting the cognac, um, and that has to do with alcohol being used for the production in gunpowder. And so people in the region really wanted to protect what they were making, so they established rules to make it only in their only for their region, so it couldn't be used for other things. 1938, you start getting vintages. Yeah, the last little part, super nerdy. We can answer that question if it really comes up. So this is where, kind of to show you the influence and to show you that this incredibly beautiful French product is also a part of a kind of a global sphere. This is one of my favorite cognacs, Bosch Gabrielsen. This is a VS, which means it's a minimum of 2 years. If you want to start tasting this, if you have your dumplings, it goes really well with dumplings, especially if you've got those pork and shrimp ones, or just the shrimp. Either way, it will taste very, very good together. This is the most popular cognac in like Norway, pretty sure Norway, that entire region, Norway, Sweden. If you go up there, their cognac they're most likely drinking is this one, and it's owned by a family that can trace their roots back to that region, but is been in the cognac region since 1905. I love it. It's bright. It's refreshing. It's you can tell the calcium in the soil in this as well. All right. Keep sipping on this. Enjoy your dumplings. We'll talk a little more. And if you have questions, don't forget to ask. And I can go so. Yes, especially yes, seafood dumplings for sure. This is entirely one of my absolute favorite cognacs, and I'm so happy that we're tasting it. So I'm gonna go into some nerdy things. Please feel free to ask questions. When we talk about grape growing, the roots and how the roots have to fight with the soil become very important, because the further down the roots go, the more nutrients they're able to get, and so that makes stronger vines. Um, Cognac region is very famous for having calcareous soils. Two of the regions are named Champagne, and that is because the soils are very high in this incredible limestone. So the center region is called Grand Champagne, and then a little bit out from there, if you remember that like bullseye map I showed you earlier, and that tends to have companion soils. So that's much chalkier soils. So imagine it rains, what the soil can hold in terms of water become important. Calcium-rich soils tend to hold water a little better, especially when a little bit below that it's able to have some drainage. So these soils can make the plants grow a certain way. It's not any better or worse than any other region. It just gives you a different kind of flavor. And that's what's important. All cognacs, for the most part, are absolutely delicious. I have yet to find one that is not. So when we're talking about soils, we're talking about different ways that the ground imparts itself into the plant. Taste of place, this is very much the case. The I'm going to try to say it in English, grois, gua. It's a large part of the kind of more outer region, not quite to the ocean, but a little bit further out. It's a kind of a mix of some of those typical like muddy soils with some limestone, and that limestone comes from ancient sea animals. So that's kind of when we're talking about it, where you can think like oyster shells, things of that nature. Some more Peba and district more like clay. And if you think back to that little bullseye, as you go closer to the water, the sand starts to turn more, I mean, the soil starts to turn more like sand. So as you see the soils changing here, imagine the ground, the topography also changing. So you're going from these rolling hills into this kind of more marshy area all the way up to kind of a sanded ocean. And so that's what you can see here. And this is going to make each one of the plants taste different. Each one of the grapes are going to taste different because of this, because of how they are able to take up nutrients, how they're able to, yeah, just grow and produce what we love. All right, so here's another one. And the reason I put this one next is to give you kind of an example of going from VS to a VSOP. So these aging formulations you'll notice are in English. Very special old pale, extra old. And that also shows you some of the global influence of it. This is something that is being used to all over the world, being export. Most people drinking cognac are not in France. They're either, oh yes, absolutely. It's no, Naud, and this is a VSOP, Naud. So this one is going to have a little more age, so you're going to find it to be a little more round. These guys who are producing it are kind of newer to the cognac region or so, last century, so only 5 generations, which is not that new, but considering some of these people, sorry, there's a question. Really enjoying it right now. It says it tastes more like Scotch from Speyside areas than he was. Okay, so yes. It does, sometimes people do think that cognac can taste like Scotch. And one of the reasons has to do with the still. They're both using copper pot stills. We'll get into that just in a little bit. But they both are very much agricultural products that are tasting of where they come from. Sorry, so this cognac, it's a very delicious cognac, so we should mention it real quick. This one is very much going to have those Scotch flavors, especially, and the last one as well. They're just very clean, bright. Sometimes those are the feelings you get with Speyside Scotches, so that's maybe where it's coming from. I love this one. I'm going to sip it real quick. Yes, very much love that cognac. And then take your time with it, but I like to compare these two with each other. Hardy is on my list of, it's I think one of my top favorite cognac houses, top maybe 5, especially because the owner, Benedict Hardy, is one of the most incredible people I have ever met in my life. She is so genuine, so sweet. Every time I've interacted with her, it has been a delight. But she also, her house makes such a wonderful, incredible cognac. And putting this with the No side by side, giving you an example of what 2 VSOPs can be and how drastically different they can be. And one, you've got a little more depth and like roundness, and the other one is a little brighter and almost feels lighter. Oh yeah, there's you guys all got fortune cookies with cognac as well. All right, we'll talk more about cognac and speed past some of these things. So you've got these beautiful grapes growing in this beautiful region, and it's taking all the nutrients from the soil and producing these grapes over a few years. Usually around 4 to 7 is the sweet spot for growing the grapes, although some grapevines grow up until 30 years or more. They produce less and less as they get older. So you take the grapes, you squeeze all the juice out, and then you're going to make a wine. All right, so when we talk cognac, we're talking about soil, we're talking about a beautiful place, but we're also talking about wine. And this is one of the wonderful things about it being in France, is they're so brilliant at wine production. The main grape used in cognac is Uni Blanc, although with climate change happening, they are also doing research on other grapes. So there's another varietal that's being experimented. And when we talk about experimentations in cognac, you're talking about from now to 10 years from now. So if I start something now, I'm not going to know how good it tastes for another 10 to 30 years. So it takes a process. But you want high acidity, low alcohol with the wine. So you want it to be around 7 to 8%. And it's not something you're going to want to drink. It's going to taste like the most sour Gruner wine you've ever had in your life. But that sourness, that acidity is really good to keep the wine fresh, because when you go to do the next step, which is distillation, you want it to taste as fresh as possible. So I mentioned earlier about there being a lot of grapes grown and why it's the second largest wine growing region. It's because for every 9 liters of wine, you get 1 liter of cognac. So this is a very funny thing. If you think about Scotch, as somebody mentioned earlier, you've got cognac brings good fortune. I love that. So they're in the Scotch region, you've got so many stills. Everybody seems to have another still. But for the little region that there is, and for the amount of cognac being produced, only having 3,000 stills is actually almost nothing. Each still, if you think about this as well, there's a little video I'll show you, but every time you distill, you have to distill twice. So you put it in these big, beautiful copper stills. It comes out once. Then you have to empty it, scrub it out physically, put that stuff that came out back in, and distill again. So this process is painstaking. It takes a long time. Yeah, distillation only happens from October to March 31st, and that's it. Anything after that cannot be called cognac. It is not good, most likely, because that wine does not stay fresh for that long. That's why that period is so limited. Harvest usually begins around August, although it's starting to be a little earlier, and goes up until probably about October. And then October to March is the distillation period. Here's the video. So as you can see, yeah, it's a very intricate process. You can't add additives, and also you have to. Sulfur is a natural byproduct of making wine. No matter what wine you do, no matter what and how you make wine, you're always going to have sulfur as a byproduct. It can be super low, um, and that's kind of the goal. That's why they ferment to such a low amount, and that's why they have such acidic grapes, so that when it goes to distilling, you don't have sulfur in that distillation. Um, Again, that's a super nerdy thing, but it becomes important when you're thinking about the flavor coming out the other end of the still. Um, yes, so this is always fun. I didn't believe this when I first saw this, but as you taste cognac, there are a lot of different things in there. This is kind of a map of everything it goes through. Goes from obviously grape flavors to flowers to pineapples, all the way to violets. And the more it ages, the more complex this stuff can become up to a point. Because at a certain point, the cognac just starts to taste like wood. So most cognac isn't aged past 30 years unless it's intentionally overaged to taste like wood. And this is where we start talking about aging and blending. I don't know how to go back, but let's see. So wood, this was one of my favorite things to see when I went to Cognac. In the way they handle the wood is completely different than the way it happens in the United States. All of the oak that's used is from France. It has to be French oak. There's a couple of different very large forests that they take it from. But what's really interesting is rather than saw the wood, you have to split it to get it separated. So you actually split the staves and pull them apart versus using a saw. And then once you do that, you stack them in these intricate layers. And then you allow those layers to just be out in the sun 24 to 36 months. This is one of the coolest things. It grows a mold on it that's very good and protects it. And so the weathering, the rain pouring on it, the sun beating down on the wood, all help to strip some of the bad flavors out and allow just the heart of the oak to really show itself. And then once they do this, they'll even move it around on the property where they're aging it, because they want certain pieces of sun. It's a really intricate and beautiful process that really goes to show the attention to nature and detail, especially when it comes to climate change, where they're actually seeing the differences in different plots within their own different parts of their plots within that, and changing the locations based upon that. Yep. So we go a little further. This is just the different things you can taste, the different things that are in there: vanilla, clove, coconut. And so you've got first the taste of the wine, then you've got the taste of the distillation, because the distillation process imparts and pulls out certain flavors. And then the wood aging adds more. So it's incredible to watch these people make these barrels, because you have to, it's basically like you build a puzzle, and then you toast the inside with the heat. Not like in anybody familiar with bourbon, they really char the barrels pretty intensely, so they look almost like alligators on the inside. Cognac toasts are fairly light. They don't tend to burn the inside quite as high. And so this is kind of an example. Light heat, you get almonds and clove. Medium, you get flowers like vanilla, and then yes, process would be a really good video. Maybe I'll send mine in. Okay, then high heat, you get a lot of other more complex flavors. I'm not really sure. That looks like salmon. So the type of grain is really important, and this was an interesting thing as well. They used to say that where the tree came from would change the type of grain. They no longer say that, because if a tree is growing close to, say, a very warm place, the grains are going to change. If the tree has a lot of space to grow, the grains will tend to be a lot larger. And so when you're making a barrel, large and fine grain makes a difference because that's allowing these barrels are put in humid or dry cellars, and that allows either water or alcohol to escape out of these barrels. So you're condensing the flavor. And if it's a large grain, obviously more things can escape versus a fine grain where everything is kind of, the liquid inside is held tightly together. This is interesting. We were commenting on this earlier today, large grain and then putting the houses underneath. This is fairly accurate, but what you will also learn, at least what I've learned from visiting, is sometimes they will intentionally change the barrel for the eau de vie that's in there and take it from a fine grain to a large grain to a fine grain so that it slows down the aging process. It just depends on what your cellar is as well. But yeah. So here's kind of, you almost never have a cognac aged for 50 years. It has to be a really, really impressive eau de vie, which is what we call cognac before it's been aged. Anything before 2 years is called an eau de vie. So you almost never have 50 years. Most likely the sweet spot is somewhere between 10 and 20. And most cognacs that you have are a blend. Pretty much, I'd say about 99% of them. So it can be whatever the label is. If it's BS, it means the minimum is 2 years. If it's XO, it means the minimum is 10. But it's a blend, so you might have something that's a little bit of like maybe 2% 50-year, but the heart is going to be somewhere based on what the expression is. And these are the different flavors that come with it. As I said, the distillation, after the distillation gets put in barreled, and some of that alcohol actually escapes out of the barrel. We call that angel share. It's the same as evaporation. One of the amazing things about cognac is that they use humid and dry cellars. So if you have a humid cellar, you're going to have alcohol evaporating, versus if you have a dry cellar, when you're going to most likely have water evaporating. Or I might have that backwards. I always get them confused, but essentially they either put it in a dry or a wet cellar in order to choose which part they want to have come out of there. Yeah, and that video that Melrose posted is actually a really great one for barrel being formed. Categories here again, like I was saying, these are the age names. This Napoleon is new in the last few years. And then even the XO has been adjusted. It's pretty much always 10 plus, but it is 10. Napoleon is 6 years, VSOP is 4, and VS is 2. And you'll see some cognac producers, especially lately, are starting to no longer use VSOP, but these are some other names underneath that are what can often be used. And this is where we can try some interesting well-aged cognacs. So Merlot is really interesting because they're mostly pulling from the Borderies region and Fimbois. So these tend to be a little more floral. And then we're going to contrast that with the other cognac, which is Maxime Trio. So Merlot, it's an older house. It is absolutely tasty and delicious. It was originally, they produced and would sell to other producers. So they would distill and other people would buy and then age, or they would age and then sell that cognac and people would sell it under their label. Hennessy is very well known for doing this. They will buy the best cognacs they can find, or the best eau de vie, and then they will age it themselves. So you've got farmers who just grow, you've got distillers who just distill, and then you've got producers who are looking to buy and age themselves and blend themselves. So Merlot was originally a house specifically for producing with other people, for other people, and now they've started coming out with their own. Well, they have for a little while. It's absolutely delicious. Borders region is one of my favorites to taste from. It's very distinctive. You'll notice it with a trio. I don't actually know which part of land this one is from, but it tends to be more towards Petit Champagne. It doesn't say on here. But you'll get a taste of the two different areas. They're both XOs. You can also see the blend and how one producer will choose one style for a blend versus another. And this one to me is much more fruity than the Merlot. And it just, yeah, they just have their own styles. And this is one of the things I do love so much about Cognac is every house has its own style. Everyone is making something the way they want to, or the way that their family has shown them, more likely than not. Yeah, so super happy to open things up for questions. If you want to taste and compare, or if anybody has a favorite that they want to talk about, can also talk a little bit about what it's like being in Lunar New Year's here in Hong Kong. This is my second year now experiencing Lunar New Year here. We have these oranges all over the place. I walk down the street and it's just people, just these beautiful red banners everywhere, and people burning messages to their relatives, fun traditions as well. Usually we go have, for the last couple of years now, we've been having hot pot. Other things like a friend of mine lost a family member recently, and she's not able to go visit because it's bad luck. So there's a lot of superstition and a lot of really interesting tradition in all of it. Cognac is actually a big part of it. You often give it as a gift here. Yeah, so having it with the dumplings makes a lot of sense. Was anybody surprised by the taste? Yes, go back to the first slide. Let's see how to do that. I have to play again. Not so good with technology. Cognac is very popular in Hong Kong. It's people just, they don't generally know what it is, and there's a difference between Cognac and Hennessy here. Hennessy they consider a whiskey, which it isn't, even though it's really a Cognac. But people love Cognac here. I as a Cognac educator here in Hong Kong, I get a lot of requests to come teach and to explain it to people. Sorry, there was a question about limitations in a similar way to, yes, so there are a lot of Cognac imitations. That's why the AOC was, one of the other reasons the AOC was created was to establish and delineate exactly what it is to be a Cognac. The double distillation, the even the way that things grow have to be very particular. I know there is something they call Cognac in, or was it Slovenia, that isn't Cognac whatsoever. And then, of course, here in Hong Kong, because we are close to China, and sometimes people like to make things that, I saw somebody said probably, and just they like to make things to sell. There are a lot of imitations produced here as well. They are very obvious imitations and do not taste good. Recommended serving temperature. So this is a good question. Temperature. I prefer my cognacs at room temperature. It is fun to take a VS, and I like to chill it sometimes. But for me, I think you get more flavor out of it at room temperature. Glassware is really important too. I am not a fan of snifters. I don't understand how that became a thing. Your hand heating it up is supposed to give you more flavor, more scent, but what I find is that my hand heating it up just gives me a nose full of alcohol. So these beautiful tulip glasses are really great. If you don't have that, like a old-fashioned glass, or even I'm using these, it's not the best, but it opens it up so uh, you can smell it. And yes, Melrose, it's good point. Cognac is a brandy. Wine glass is also very good. Yeah, cognac is a brandy, but not all brandies are cognac. Brandy means a fruit-based distillate, often aged. Depends on where you are for that part of the categorization. And cognac must be aged a minimum of 2 years in French oak barrels in France. Hashtag no snifter. Um, Great. Let's try to go back to the original. Yeah, one of the worst things about moving to Hong Kong is I left all of my cognac tasting glasses back in the US in a storage unit in New York. I love the dumplings with the cognac is a brilliant idea. As always, you guys have some very brilliant ideas. Cognac USA. Last year we did a really amazing sushi combination, cognac and sushi. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Um, yes, the chocolate coins. Um, so one of the great things and one of the really interesting things here in Hong Kong is as you walk around, especially for Lunar New Year's, um, there's chocolate being sold everywhere. There's almonds being sold everywhere. It's good fortune. So these chocolate coins that you guys received are supposed to help you have a good New Year. And so we closed. This entire city is going to close on Monday. Monday for about a week, no one will be able to do anything. So we rushed to get everything done. Um, and one of the reasons for that is you want to exit the year having completed everything. And then you take that week to just enjoy, be with family. You have dinners with everyone. And these little chocolate coins are a way of kind of sharing good fortune, literally. um, Chocolate and cognac is the best pairing. Um, yeah, I would say the chocolate coin and the Merlot might be the best, but yeah, the Maxine Trudeau is also super good with it. Um, what else we got? Other weird traditions here. Dumplings. Everything gets closed. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. We get because we get 2 New Years here. We have the New Year's everybody else does. Then things are open for about 3 weeks, and then everything closes. That's amazing. Yeah, sushi and cognac combination is the best as well. I love that. People in Hong Kong drink more cognac than wine. Yeah, so one of the really interesting things about being in Hong Kong is it is such a cocktail culture. Wine is fairly new, um, it seems. I'm actually opening a wine bar soon across the street from where I'm sitting right now, and it's much easier to get somebody to drink a glass of cognac here than it is to get them to drink a glass of wine. If you tell them it's a really high-end, expensive wine, they will be really excited and they will drink it. But it seems like they tend to have a little more appreciation for cognac and for spirits generally. Um, oh, thanks. Yeah, cognac tends to be something that it's very odd. Spirits and cocktails entirely like my wife has another bar called the Pontiac, and we sold so many cocktails, and it was very challenging to get people to drink wine there. Whereas the U.S., sometimes it was the exact opposite for me and my bars was, hey, let me pour you a glass of wine, and they're like, yes. Would you like a cocktail? No. um, but even in coffee shops here, you see cognac up on the walls. Um, I'll tell you one of my favorite ways to drink cognac is as a shot. Highly recommend. A little way to get the day started. Um, just a little quick thing of it. Share with friends. I think we put so much emphasis on cognac being this thing that you have to sit and ponder over, when in reality, it is something that you can enjoy in many different ways. I highly recommend exploring the VS and the VSOP quite a bit. Um, VS, it's the most underlooked at cognac area, but it's wonderful for everything. My favorite cognac cocktail, uh, the Sazerac, is definitely up there, but I also love a brandy cresta, cognac cresta for sure. Um, there's this really old traditional cocktail from New Orleans called the Raffignac, which is raspberry vinegar and cognac with soda water. I would drink that every single day if I could. But also cognac and ginger ale, big fan. Cognac and soda has been a new thing. Um, I'm not always a big whiskey drinker, so cognac highball has been something I've been calling for when I go to bars here. Um, yeah, I do not have a favorite cognac. If anybody wants to ask that, because they are all delicious. Um, for so I don't want to play favorites with any cognac brand because they are all absolutely wonderful. But I will tell you, for my home, what I have. Um, I have Pierre Ferrand Ambre as my cognac for making drinks. It's a little fancy. I think it would be considered a Napoleon. And for drinking, I definitely have the Hardy XO. Um, it is absolutely tasty. I sit on my roof in the hot Hong Kong summer with my wife, talking about the day, usually around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, or 5 or 6, or if she's been out quite late, 8 a.m., which is right before we go to bed, and just enjoy a cognac as the sun comes up. Often that is Hardy. Let's see, any more questions? Cognac and coffee is really, 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 really good. Um, One of my favorite things to do. Uh, I will send you guys a photo of the two of us drinking cognac at sunrise. It's my favorite time of the day. She gets home. She's been working for 14, 15 hours. I've had a nap. We sit on the roof. The sun's coming up over Hong Kong, um, and we're just enjoying cognac, talking about our day. Um, but yeah, so I do like going to the coffee shop here. You get a espresso, and then I'll get a shot of cognac, and I'll rinse the espresso out that way. It's one of my favorite little things I learned from being in the Cognac region. They call it a petit canard, a little duck. Very cute, often with a sugar cube added. So cognac will last maybe 100 years or more, as long as the bottle's kept well, as long as it's not able to evaporate. It's not like wine where wine goes bad, because what's in there is essentially concentrated. So as long as you are sealing the bottle tightly, you're fine. Evaporation or anything getting in there from the outside world is the only issue. Um, but if you go into the cellars in the cognac region, they age in the barrel, and then once it's hit the prime flavor, they'll take it out of the barrel and put it into glass demijohns. And those glass demijohns will keep the cognac for indefinitely. It will start to taste a little different as the cognac ages in the bottle, but it's not a noticeable. I find it noticeable because I drink a lot, but it's the cognac kind of settling into itself. Yes, espresso, and I might actually also have an espresso and cognac. Year, I was born in the year of the dog. So if you were Melrose, you were born in the year of the tiger, you were probably a wood tiger, I would guess. Every 60 years, the the zodiac repeats itself. So my mom turned 60 a couple years ago, and she is a metal rat. Um, yeah, I'm a water dog, so in 20 years, it will be the year of the water dog again. Anybody have a favorite of these cognacs? Yeah, the Bosch is so good. First time I came across Bosch, whoa, so many. Um, yeah, Hardy is really good. Wait, what's this about bad luck? Um, I think my favorite in here is I don't have a favorite actually. Of these. First time I had the Bach, it's interesting. I didn't know this about wearing red. Um, yeah, so interesting. The temple. So there's a lot of temples here. Everybody is going to the temple right now and making offerings, and we have a little. As you walk down the street, there are these little corner shrines where people leave food, especially oranges, and in order to bring good luck for the year. It's wonderful. All the traditions here are absolutely incredible. Um, Especially, I'm a big fan of the Ghost Moon, which is in the fall, and then New Year's as well. A lot of the similar traditions for both. Um, yeah, I'm actually going to go to the temple tomorrow and make an offering. Thank you all so much. Yeah, and hope you all have a good New Year.